I believe in having a beautiful office space that a customer comes into. I still believe that buying a home is a very scary, intimidating process, and it requires a professional consultation. I believe that even though people are in t-shirts and hats and working over Zoom every day, that having a client take time off work and drive across town and sit on my playing field and going through my process not only helps with conversion, but actually makes a real impact on a client and creates a client for life rather than a transaction.
Welcome to the Raquel Show. This show is for entrepreneurs who want to play bigger in business and in life. And as many of you know, I love bringing people that absolutely love to play bigger. And my guest today is all about that. She's a mortgage professional who has a track record, I just heard, of $1.6 billion in sales and is very passionate about creating a movement around community and collaboration. And I met her at a mastermind. And I think this is why it's so important to get into rooms. Matter of fact, she's actually speaking at our She Summit in a few months that I'm hosting later on this year. And today we're going to talk all things team. We're going to talk all things community and collaboration. So welcome to the show, Shayla Gifford.
Thank you, Raquel. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy that you're here, and I'm glad that I get to interview you today, and I want to dive right into it. 1.6 billion. That is not a number that many people achieve in this industry. And we know that comes with a lot of parts, especially the right team and an amazing team. So tell me, why are you so passionate about team building?
It's interesting because I wasn't in the beginning part of my career. I'm 43 years old. I've been doing this for 20 years. And the first 6 years of my career, I was completely a rugged individualist. I didn't think anybody could do anything as fast or as good as I did. I was literally caught saying, gosh, if I could just hire one person smarter than me, wouldn't that be great? And I'm so embarrassed that was my outlook. I was a college dropout. I get started at 23. Prior to being in mortgage, I was in direct sales and network marketing. So I was selling weight loss pills and vitamins and pitching a pyramid deal. And so I get involved in this business and I already feel like I've got a chip on my shoulder. I am young. I have something to prove. I had just quote unquote failed at network marketing. I was broke when I started. And this business immediately clicked with my personality because I'm very detail oriented and I'm also extremely driven and competitive and bold. I'm willing to just go for things. And so loans are quite complex. They're technical and there's a lot of moving pieces. And my sales background in network marketing, which was way harder than this, way harder, allowed me to understand people and manage emotions and build relationships. And so, I got involved in the industry and kind of felt like it was easy for me right away. I worked really hard, but relative to pitching a pyramid deal and selling vitamins, like it was not hard. And I think perspective is everything, especially right now with how hard the industry is, quote unquote. The people that I see that are suffering and struggling more just don't have the contrast. Like they've never worked a really shitty, hard, stressful, yucky kind of a job. And so they're whining about the fact that they got to go do networking and they got to sit in open houses and they've got to go meet people. And I'm like, you need to go back to a cubicle with a really asshole boss and have some perspective. But anyway, the first 6 months I make 100 grand. The second year I make 180. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth year I made about 300 grand a year. And I was working 12-hour days. I was stressed out all the time. I always had one or two phones tied to my ear. I'm answering emails in 5 seconds. I was very much freaked out and worried all the time that maybe I would be found out because I was still young and new. And I was always worried that if I didn't perform this one time, I would lose that client or lose the referral partner. So the first 6 years was not about abundance. It wasn't about big vision. It wasn't about what am I building? It was simply survive and prove yourself mode. And after 6 years, the best thing that ever happened to me, which was that I was fired from my job. Actually, the company came and closed down and I was pushed out on the sidewalk. And it really pissed me off to a core level, Raquel, because I had dedicated everything to my job, no life balance, 100% about work. And I just felt like I was a number on a spreadsheet. Like I'd been number one at the bank that I was working with. And they said, "Hey, we really appreciate you, but, blah, 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 corporate decisions, we're going to close the branch." And so it was at that time where life punched me in the face, where I said, okay, this is a good moment. I just got married a month ago. My parents got divorced and we're both workaholics. I don't want that for my life. I've got to find a better way. I got to find better people to be around because I don't trust or respect any of the people that I had worked with the first 6 years. They were all douchebags and they were people that I wouldn't want to affiliate with, wasn't proud to be seen with. And so I said, if I'm going to keep doing this, I've got to be in a better community around better people. And then second, my husband was saying to me, "Shayla, there's got to be a better way than the way you're doing this." And I remember, again, being a know-it-all going, what do you know? Like, I'm a blonde chick in Reno, Nevada, making $300,000 a year as a dropout. And so I had that like kind of humility and gratitude that also kept me thinking small. And it was only until my world got rocked that I thought maybe there is a better way. Because if I keep going on the path that I'm going on, not only am I going to be like burnt out, but I'm probably going to be divorced. And that's not really the life I want to have. So
Mhm.
that's when I started thinking about team.
So you started thinking about team because you saw all the things. And what a perfect storm, right? Is a company shuts down, you have an opportunity to rebuild. What was the first person, or who was the first person that you hired on team? Because you're super passionate about building teams, and today you've got a pretty big team.
So there's different teams. So I have my personal production team, the Gifford team, and then I've got now a collection of leaders that run branches and loan officers inside of those branches that work for me and so on. So we'll first just talk production team because that's where I focused and I still focus a good majority of my time. When I First of all, I found a mentor. So I was introduced to a coaching program back in 2009 at the same time that I had to find and align myself with a new company. So I joined Guild Mortgage in November of 2009 and I find the core training and coaching program in around that same time. I went to my first event 6 months later. And as I was listening to coaching and looking at these top producers, and actually getting out of Reno, Nevada and starting to look around the world and going, okay, what's going on out there? I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know this was possible. I never had a good mentor. I never had been in an environment where I could look at someone else as an example and duplicate what they were doing. So
Yeah.
I had to fly myself out to my first conference in Phoenix in May of 2010 and go, whoa, there's a whole nother world out here. And I met a mentor who was 2 years older than me. We're still great friends. And he was making $1 million a year. And I was making 300 thinking I'm hot shit and working a bazillion hours. And I was like, okay. And so from that minute on, I just surrendered. I was like, I'm going to learn what you do. And
Mhm.
I asked a bazillion questions. I'm very coachable. I'm willing to try new things, even if it felt uncomfortable, because I care more about getting the result than I care about staying comfortable. I care
Yeah.
more about the result than being right. I will use someone else's plan or program as long as it gets the result that I want. And so I surrendered to coaching and a plan. And he gave me a plan. He said, this is what I do every single day. This is when you need to hire a person. This is their characteristics. You can fly to my office and see what I do. You can meet my team and see what they do. And I took full advantage of that. And so the first person I hired was with me for 12 years. She just retired. She was my escrow officer and she was a total badass, never complained, always positive attitude, always like, let's go get more, let's build together, super. driven, and
Mhm.
she had a life change and was sick of title. And when I told her one day, I think I need to hire an assistant, I need to start like building a team, she looked at me and said, "What about me?" I was like, "What?"
You got lucky.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the reason that was so helpful is that when you hire somebody you respect,
Mhm.
it called me to be the best version of me. There's
Right.
now no lax days. There's no whining or complaining because I wanted success for Lynette just as much, even if not more, than my own success. And so
Mhm.
not only did I become accountable to Lynette and our mutual goals, but I then became accountable to business partners, to people I was going out and meeting, like you, Raquel, and saying, "Hey, what are you doing? And how can I help you? And how can we partner together?" And so I just continue to grow that circle of accountability, if you will. And her and I started building it. And then after 6 months, I hired my second assistant, and another 6 months, the third assistant, another 6 months, the fourth assistant. And then my personal production grew from 20 million to 40 million to 80 million to 96 to 130, on and on. Her and I together, she just retired at the end of 2022. And my team here at Gill Mortgage, since I've been here almost 15 years, we've closed 6,287 loans, because I just looked at it, for 1.68 billion. And that's just my team. Because I had bought into coaching, bought into a plan, bought into accountability, and saw that I was still the same Shayla,
Yeah.
but my results all of a sudden just accelerated year after year. I realized that it was the plan that was working. I took the same motivated chick and now gave her a plan, and now gave her a recipe for a team and for leadership, with a
Yeah.
lot of lessons along the way. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, if I can do it, you could do it.
Yeah.
And so that's slowly how I started building the branches. And I hired first Jorge, and then it was Michelle, and then it was Brian. And generally 2 to 3 people a year I would hire, or I would grow out of the assistant role and into an independent loan officer that's now out building their own brand and their own business. And that team I just looked up. Not that this needs to be too braggy, but I'm so proud of my report I just put together that looks over 15 years, but it's a total of $9.9 billion in sales with my whole team and all my loan officers. And I'm waiting
Awesome.
for the number of loans to pop up, but
I
it's
think
kind of
first thing,
remarkable to look at.
yeah, first things first is like kudos to you for taking a leap of faith. And 2009, 2010s weren't pretty years, right? And to go outside of your what was comfortable in Reno, go out of that environment and get coached and be coachable and actually implement. I always tell people you could scale anything. People have all the ingredients, but it's in the order that actually makes the difference. And it sounded like you hired your one, then you hired your two, right? And as I look at our industry, whether you're a loan officer or you're a real estate agent, there's very few people that can actually run teams today, and like at a really high level. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that teams faced, and how did you overcome them? Because as you continue to grow, especially with 50 plus people, you have a goal to do 100. Leadership looks a lot different as you scale up and you're leading leaders.
Well, I think the key for me is that I've always been willing to lead by example. And for the longest time, I was the top producer doing everything that I'm asking my people to do. And
Mhm.
so I just think that there was complete buy in. The market also helped so much, Rachel. Like, let's be real. From 2012 to 2021, I call that Act One. That was a 10-year run where essentially the rates went down and down and down and down and down and down, and home values went up and up and up and up and up. And so if you're doing the right activities and you're in the right environment that's positive and nurturing and improvement focused and around excellence and process oriented, and you're somebody who just does the work, you're going to see that growth. The last 2 years have tested us dramatically. I mean, my team in, 18, 19 were both $1 billion each of those years. 20 and 21 were 1.6 billion those each of those years. In 23, we did 450. So we went from 1.6 billion down to 450 million.
Mhm.
So it was in that moment after I had to do 5 rounds of layoffs, over 65 employees, which I looked at like family, underwriters, admins, processors, assistants. People have been with me for 8 and 10 years, and I'm having to say, I never would have thought it would get this bad, that I would have to do a 3rd round and then a 4th round. And then the 5th round, I laid off 21 people on the 5th round. And so it was really brutal and still has been brutal. But I look myself in the mirror and say, why did I do this in the first place? I really believe that if I've been this blessed and fortunate to be handed the plan and the recipe and an industry where it's limitless, I want to give that back to other people. I hit the top of my financial mountain a long time ago and could have just said, thanks, everybody, peace out. But I'm just not that kind of person. I want to be able to pull people up that mountain. And the proudest moments I have are the fact that I retired Lynette. I retired Debbie Secord. I retired Vicky Haven. Like I want people to get to their own top of their financial mountain. And
Right.
I love seeing the transformation and growth, self actualization that happens in the pursuit of a goal. I'm
Yeah.
just obsessed with that. I think that we're all born extremely special and we all have these strengths. It's just whether or not you're actually freaking utilizing them and harnessing them in a way that can align with whatever it is your goal is. And I had to look myself in the mirror as I'm pulling the business apart, and it's not fun. And we don't feel like we're winning. We feel like we're playing not to lose. We're cutting expenses. I mean, it just sucked. And I said, am I going to be a one hit wonder? Because if we're a successful leader and made a lot of money in that 10-year window of Act One from 2012 to 21, good for you. It was the perfect market conditions for that.
Mhm.
What about now? Like this is now Act Two. I think 23 and 24 have been these big shakeup years where everything's been thrown in a jar and shaken up. And we've got the election and we've had rates go from 2% to 8%. We've had no inventory. It's just been gnarly. And now it's a new dawn. And
Right.
am I going to have the ability to adapt, to bring creativity, to hold my people accountable, to renegotiate whatever partnerships, relationships need to be renegotiated and worked on? And I'm just that long term girl. Like, you can't shake me. If we're in a partnership, like, if you're going to divorce me, you have to tell me. You have to let me know. You can't just go radio silent. I'm in the weeds with people. So, why do I think other leaders, you know, have struggled?
Where do you
Because
see where do you see teams making mistakes today
well,
when it
I
comes
mean,
to building?
I do treat this like a family, but I have to be real that it is a business and there's needs of the business and we have to step up and run the business. And so I think a lot of people who love their people and run it like a family also are not business minded. And so they will hang on to their team too long. They will deal with bad behaviors and bad habits. They won't have the tough conversations. They don't set a vision and run into the war. They're waiting and looking over their shoulder at everybody else. I think you've got to be Braveheart. You've got to be out in front and you've got to go, ah! Even if it's in the wrong direction, you have to be that person out front and you got to have a backbone and you got to say, nope, that is not right. This is not how we behave. This is who we are. This is where we're going. And even then, people won't succeed. We can't do things for other people. And the greatest wounding that I get as a leader is losing people because I
Mhm.
take it so personally because this is personal to me. I care that much. But the business part of me that has had to mature is had to say, like, look, this if we don't make business decisions, we won't have a business, period.
Right.
And we go to work to make money. We go to work to build wealth. I
Right.
don't give a shit about the trophies and the accolades and the ribbons on the wall. Like, we could all go have other hobbies and win a pickleball trophy. This is about making money and building wealth and being a responsible business person. So I think it's that. The other thing I think, Raquel, is people become leaders for the wrong reasons, if you will. For example, in the mortgage industry, a lot of people have a title like I'm a branch manager, or I'm a district manager, or I'm a regional VP, and they never did it to change other people's lives necessarily. They may have said that, but often it's because they were the top producer and they wanted just that next rung on the belt. They wanted the override. They wanted money off of other people. But when
Mhm.
shit's gotten hard, where are they?
Right.
Are they innovating? Are they digging in? Are they kicking people in the butt and patting them on the back and shaking them up and loving on them? Are they really engaged as a leader? And then finally, just picking the wrong people, like not being uber clear on the people that you're capable of helping. And
Mhm.
because I was a top producer, I think that it's insulated me because I just knew I can't, I'm sprinting. I'm going at sprint pace. This is the Kentucky Derby. And if you're a little pony and you
Mhm.
aren't strong technically and you don't want to run, you're going to get trampled. And
Yeah.
so I was very selective about the people I would bring into the ring or bring out of the track because I love running with people and I love those super driven misfits. But if you were, even if you're driven and you're new, I didn't really have the ability to take you on. I needed you to have some technical abilities and be technically strong. And then I could teach you how to sell and how to build and how to be a leader and how to build rhythm and routine. So that was my gate.
Yeah. Well, I love how you broke it down because I think leadership is definitely not easy. And the great leaders always lead from the front, regardless of whatever challenges are coming their way, whether it's laying off people because it's a business decision that has to be done. It's not never fun. And no matter how many times you do it, it doesn't always get easier because there is heart, especially when you've treated people like family. There is a relationship outside of business. You've got to be that strong leader to say, we've got to, at the end of the day, we still have to run the business.
Yep.
So you've had what, 15 years, right? Or
Yep.
of, of experience. What do you think has been the biggest lesson that you've learned when it comes to attracting the right people in your world?
I asked the funniest questions. In an interview, of course, I'll do a forward conversation. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your other jobs. What you like? What don't you like? But I will go deep. Like, I'm going to follow that thread down 6 or 7 questions. I want to know, where were you born and where do you fit in birth order? And tell me about your parents and what they did growing up. And what did you do in high school? What was your first job ever? And I really want to know the key motivations of a person. I like that person that's got a chip on their shoulder. Either they grew up and their parents had money and there was a certain level of lifestyle that they have as a minimum for themselves in their life, or maybe they grew up in an opposite situation and didn't have, quality tennis shoes growing up, and this is their fuel to never let that happen to themselves and their children. I want to know about their overall well-being and stability. I think some of the people who have struggled the most are the ones that haven't been doing the personal work to know themselves and to regulate their emotions.
Mhm.
And I don't know, my number one rule is I will not hire you unless I really, really, really like you. That's it.
Mhm.
Really. If I wouldn't want to go on vacation with you for a week, if I wouldn't want to go to dinner with you any night of the week and your spouse, I'm out. Because I always figured I could go out and get 3 or 4 loans faster than I could teach you how to do one.
Right.
And not only that, but I've already worked with douchebags. I already did that part of my career.
Right.
If I'm going to create something, I want it to be special. I
Yeah.
want to be proud of the people I work with. I want to have trust and respect. I want to be high-fiving. I want to have team swagger. I want to have each other's backs. I don't want any weak, cancerous pointing fingers, name calling, blaming, drama bullshit. I just
Yeah.
not into it. So I think that's the key thing. The other thing is I've never handed anybody a lead ever. I've
Mhm.
always taught them how to fish. And that's come from a key belief that like every skill that I have, Raquel, I've had to learn and acquire.
Yeah.
I don't believe that I was like born with many special talents. I've got a personality trait that is probably special. I'm bold and I say it like it is. And I've always been like that. In fact, in first grade, like I stood up and took over the classroom. because the teacher was too slow.
I love it. I love it.
So I've always had that leader quality of wanting to like lead and push people and help them be their best.
Yeah.
But I've always intimidated people. I didn't even like people. I didn't know how to get people to like and trust me. My social skills were really off. So like getting into sales was really hard for me actually because people didn't naturally gravitate to me. I wasn't an attractor. So I had to learn all of those things. And so because I had to learn and acquire them, I have a core fundamental belief that I can teach other people how to do that. But I can't teach you drive. I can't teach you character. Like
Yeah.
I'm hiring on.
You know what I think is so interesting that I think a lot of people, when they're hiring their teams or for people and partnerships, is you said something that I think is often missed in an interview process is how deep can you actually go with somebody to really get to know them, to know how they're wired. And I remember when we were opening up all these locations and I had to find leaders that could actually lead people is you wanted to know how their thought patterns were because that could tell you a lot, and that comes from history of knowing what their first job is or knowing when challenges hit them where they go to. Is it fight or flight, or is it scarcity or abundance? So you start to see these patterns. So I think that one thing that I want to know if for those that are listening or watching this on YouTube is like when you're hiring like the best team, like you are absolutely clear of what you want your team to look like. We run fast, we're not a pony, right? And you have a system that everyone's bought into, and now you're recruiting to that system through do you fit based on history, based on what you think. You can't teach drive. You're absolutely right. You can't. You can't want it more for others than they want it for themselves. As much as you want to see potential in everybody, at the end of the
Yep.
day, it's results and like action. So, what's next for Shayla? What are you most excited that you're working on?
Thank you for that question. So I first had to find my own fire again, which was that are you going to be a one hit wonder person? And then second, I had to create a goal that I was really excited about because at first it was like, okay, I've got to make 100 grand a year because then I'm legit. And then it was like, okay, I got to save 100 grand. And then it was, I got to make more money than my dad or something. And then it was, I've got to beat Josh. And then it was, I need to have $4 million in the bank because every Monte Carlo simulator out there said that if I've got 4 million bucks, I could go live in the rainforest and draw 250 grand in income and not do a damn thing. And I really crave freedom above all else. I crave freedom of being able to be me authentically, always in any setting. I crave freedom from anybody that sucks. I don't want to hang around anybody that zaps my energy or that I feel obligated to be around. I want freedom of doing the kind of work I want to do and spending my time the way I want to spend it. I want freedom of location. Me and my family moved to Spain in January of 2020. So those years where we did 1.6 billion 2 years in a row, I was living in Spain and working, running my business and running my team remotely. So I just crave freedom, and freedom is forever expansive. You know, you
Yeah.
could think you have a certain level of time freedom and then go, ooh, but there's a different way in which I can have time freedom. So I'm forever somebody who's learning and growing and expanding and looking at myself and seeing how I can expand my being and my spirituality and all those pieces. And when I got back at it, I said, you know what? I'm not going to tear apart my business anymore. There's certain non negotiables for me. I believe in having a beautiful office space that a customer comes into. I still believe that buying a home is a very scary, intimidating process, and it requires a professional consultation. I believe that even though people are in t-shirts and hats and working over Zoom every day, that having a client take time off work and drive across town and sit in my on my playing field and going through my process not only helps with conversion, but actually makes a real impact on a client and creates a client for life rather than a transaction. So I wasn't willing to shut down my offices and work from the basement in my underwear like so many people are. I wasn't willing to dismantle my amazing processing team, which allows you to scale, close on time, and close smooth all the time. I wasn't willing to back down from marketing and being innovative and visible and out there. I wasn't willing to back down from doing events in my community. Like, we've been number one in Reno and a lot of the markets where I've got satellite branches because we're very involved. I do consistent lunch and learns and events and networking, and we donate a lot to our community. We just do things, and that costs money. It just does. And so the only solution to maintaining this level of expense and overhead,
Yeah.
I couldn't cut back any further. I wasn't willing to. It wasn't going to be a business that I would be proud to be a part of. And
Yeah.
so it was last year, Raquel, and probably coming to the Be Wealthy event, meeting people like you in spring, where I was like, okay, I need to learn how to be a recruiter and grow. And
Mhm.
not a recruiter in the sense that I'm just trying to throw numbers and units and people on the wall and see how they stick or anything like that. It's so not my style. But I need to open up the borders and being willing to go find the people out there in our industry that are those hungry, driven, no drama people that were dying for a system and leadership, and then bring them on board. And so now, over the last 12 months, I've opened locations in Washington, D.C., in Nashville, in Minnesota, in Arizona, in Texas. And so I expand to where I find really rad, good people. And then I
Mhm.
will build around them and coach them and bring them into our platform. So that's the new goal, is to have 100 loan officers that average at least 30 million in production annually. So that's about a $3.3 billion team annually. It's a big goal that gets me excited, but the reason 100 is I feel like that's still a tight team where I can know everybody really well. I can know their quirks, I can know their dreams, I can hold them accountable, I can call them on their shit. And at the volume level of 30 million annually or more, they can actually build wealth. They're
Yeah.
not surviving, they're just not getting a little nicer stuff, but I'm now doing their budgets like I do with my team now every single month, and we were talking about building wealth, and that doesn't come if you're scraping by making 80 grand to 120 grand a year. It just doesn't work. um,
No, especially with today. So, as we wrap up, there's always one question that I want to ask every guest that comes on their show is, what does Shayla do to play bigger in business or in life?
I also just started a coaching experience called Catalyst, and it's my very own coaching experience. I actually started a coaching program inside of Guild Mortgage that is fantastic and serves about 300 loan officers and business coaching. But what I found, the things that I really love doing is thinking about, how do you be on fire in all areas of your life? There's so many people that are posting motivational quotes on Instagram, but they are toxic people. There's so many people that have the big muscles, but the rest of their life is shit. Or there's people that maybe have a big bank account and are very sad and lonely. And for me, it's like, I just want to be on fire in all domains of my life. And the process to me is really about being brave enough and courageous enough to find out what it is you really, 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 really want.
Mhm.
What do you want because you want it, not because you're justifying it to somebody else or it's what you should do or it's the next thing on the list, but what is it that you really want? And then how do we take aligned action? And in what ways do we need to grow in order to be the person that's going to achieve that kind of life? And so, anyway, Catalyst is a coaching experience, if you will, where I help people really expand their vision, simplify their strategy, hold them accountable to the daily execution strategies of living like a big ass life. You got to sit down every morning and do a hot 15. You got to come up with your top 3 things of the day. You got to be accountable every week to look back and say, what were my wins and what are my top 3 things the next week? You got to
Yeah.
stop and look at your last month and really get real, raw, and honest about the facts. Because so
Yeah.
many people live in la la land or in fairy tale land and they're just lying to themselves. And it's like, if we really want to live an expansive, unlimited, abundant, badass, awesome life, then we've got to have this process. And I think my job in Catalyst is to be the coach leading people through the experience and holding them accountable, but even more so, gathering the people. And I see that's what you're doing. When you talk about community, it's like when you get into these rooms and you meet these friends and you get around, like I know I'll be friends with you in spring forever because it's hard to find women like us. And when you do, you're like, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not a weirdo. There's another one out there. And
Wow.
so Catalyst for me is bringing people like that. And it could be from any profession, although largely right now it's real estate agents and loan officers. And I've got them on an execution sprint this month. So they're either doing a health sprint or a work sprint. And they get to pick one of three challenges: hot sauce, mild sauce, or medium sauce.
I love
And
it.
and so I'm just getting to coach them and pour into them and hold them accountable and build community around it. And then, of course, host the live retreat, my Path to Wealth retreat in November, where I'm going to roll out my planner. And my planner basically is going to help go, okay, how do you have the big vision? How do you have the annual goals? How do you have the quarterly goals? How do you have daily execution? How do you build your confidence and your self-worth through a micro action, daily success, surrounding yourself with other rad, positive people? So that's the mission I'm on. And out of the thousands of people I'll help in Catalyst, 100 of those will be loan officers I directly lead, inspire, and support to build awesome businesses and wealth.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Shayla, for being on our show today. I so appreciate you. I will always continue to support people like you that love to play bigger and bring community together.
Thank you. I will always support you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.